Imagine a world where the most powerful software company on the planet is suddenly looking over its shoulder, realize that the very engineers they've relied on for decades are packing their bags. For years, the rivalry between Microsoft and Apple was a battle of philosophies, but lately it has turned into an absolute rout. While Microsoft has been busy stuffing Windows 11 with telemetry, advertisements, and mandatory AI features that nobody asked for, Apple has been quietly listening to the people who actually build the world's technology. The result? A new machine that is being hailed as the anti-Windows laptop. This isn't just another incremental update with a faster chip. This is a direct strike at the heart of the professional workstation market. A device so perfectly tuned to what software engineers and hardware designers have been begging for, that it has reportedly left Bill Gates and the leadership at Microsoft in a state of deep embarrassment. The fortress that was the Windows PC market is cracking, and the reason is simpler than you think. It's about respect for the user, and Apple just delivered a masterclass in it. To understand why this new release is such a huge blow to Microsoft, we have to look at the current state of Windows. If you talk to any senior engineer today, they'll tell you the same thing. Windows has become a chore. Between the inconsistent user interface that still has menus from the 90s buried under 3 layers of translucent plastic, and the constant struggle with drivers and forced updates, the friction is real. But the straw that broke the camel's back was the hardware. For years, Windows laptops were either bulky powerhouses with terrible battery life, or thin ultrabooks that throttled their performance the moment you tried to compile a complex line of code. Apple changed the game with silicon, but this new machine takes it to an entirely different level. It's a device designed by engineers for engineers, and it addresses every single pain point that has made Windows a nightmare for power users lately. Bill Gates has always championed the idea that the PC is the ultimate tool for productivity because of its openness and versatility. But that versatility has turned into a liability. Windows has to support millions of different hardware combinations, which leads to instability. Apple, by controlling the silicon and the software, has created something that Microsoft simply cannot match with their current business model. This new anti-Windows laptop features a cooling system that basically never turns on because the efficiency is so high, a battery that lasts through 2 full workdays of heavy development, and most importantly, a Unix-based environment that is the native language of the Internet. When Apple revealed the benchmarks for this machine, particularly in tasks like virtualization and local machine learning, the gap between what a top-tier Windows machine can do and what this Mac can do became so wide that it was no longer a competition. It became a choice between being productive or being frustrated. The humiliation for Microsoft doesn't just come from the specs. It comes from the narrative. For decades, Microsoft was the company that got things done. Apple was for the creatives, the designers, and the artists. But in the last 48 hours, the tech forums have been flooded with testimonials from hardcore Windows developers who are making the switch. They are tired of Windows 11's recall features scanning their screens. They are tired of the operating system treating them like data points to be monetized. Apple's latest move was to double down on local privacy, ensuring that all the heavy lifting stays on the device, with zero telemetry being sent to a central server for ad profiling. It's a move that highlights exactly where Microsoft has gone wrong. By trying to turn Windows into a service, they've forgotten how to make it a tool. And engineers need tools, not services that track their every move. Inside the halls of Redmond, the panic is palpable. Microsoft tried to respond with the Surface line and their own ARM-based chips, but they stumbled because they couldn't get the software right. The emulation layers were slow, and the lack of native app support made the experience feel half-baked. Apple, on the other hand, just released a machine where every single professional tool runs natively and faster than it does on a desktop with a dedicated power supply. The engineers who were once the most loyal Windows fans are now posting videos of themselves unboxing these new Macs, laughing at how much faster their workflows have become. This isn't just a loss of market share for Microsoft. It's a loss of the very people who define what is cool and efficient in tech. When the smartest people in the room leave your platform, the rest of the room eventually follows. The irony here is delicious. Bill Gates famously saved Apple from bankruptcy in the late 90s with a $150 million investment. Now that same company has matured into a beast that is systematically dismantling his life's work in the consumer and professional space. The engineers who begged for this laptop weren't asking for more emojis or a thinner chassis. They were asking for a return to fundamentals, consistent performance, a stable kernel, and a lack of corporate interference in the user experience. Apple delivered exactly that, and they did it with a level of polish that makes Windows 11 look like a science project gone wrong. The anti-Windows laptop is a statement that says, "We know you want to work, and we're going to get out of your way and let you do it." Let's talk about the hardware specifics that are causing so much trouble for Microsoft. One of the biggest complaints engineers have had with Windows laptops is the trackpad and the keyboard. When you are coding for 10 hours a day, these things matter. While Windows manufacturers have tried to copy Apple's haptic feedback, they've never quite nailed it. This new machine features a keyboard that feels as tactile as a high-end mechanical board but fits in a sleek frame. The screen is a mini LED marvel, with a refresh rate that makes scrolling through thousands of lines of code feel like fluid motion. But the real kicker is the port selection. For years, Apple was criticized for removing ports. With this laptop, they brought them all back and added more, specifically because engineers asked for them. They stopped trying to be fashionable and started trying to be useful. Microsoft, meanwhile, is still struggling to get their hardware partners to agree on a universal standard that actually works without a bag full of dongles. Behind the scenes, the story is even more dire for Microsoft. There are reports of internal meetings where executives are questioning why their ARM transition has been so slow. The answer is simple. They are trying to maintain legacy support for apps that are 30 years old, while also trying to innovate. It's like trying to build a spaceship out of parts from a steam engine. Apple had the courage to cut the cord, move to their own architecture, and provide a transition layer that actually worked. The result is that this new anti-Windows machine can run apps from a decade ago faster than they ran on the original hardware, all while consuming a fraction of the power. Bill Gates, known for his technical prowess, surely understands the gravity of this. This isn't a marketing win for Apple. It's an engineering victory. And in the world of tech, engineering victories are the ones that last. The social media fallout has been brutal for Microsoft. Tech influencers who have been Windows advocates for years are releasing videos titled "Why I Am Finally Switching." They aren't doing it for the brand, they are doing it because their jobs depend on it. When you can compile a massive project in 3 minutes on a Mac versus 12 minutes on a top-end Windows laptop, the math is simple. Over a year, that saved time adds up to weeks of productivity. For a high-paid engineer or a growing startup, that time is literally money. Microsoft is in crisis mode because they've realized that being the default choice is no longer enough. People are now willing to go through the friction of learning a new operating system just to escape the inefficiency and the overreach of Windows. Microsoft's response has been to double down on AI, hoping that features like Copilot will keep users locked in. But for the average engineer, AI integrated into the operating system feels like a security risk and a distraction. They want a clean environment where they can build their own AI, not one that watches them work. Apple's approach with this new laptop is to provide the hardware capable of running massive local models without needing a cloud connection. It gives the power back to the developer. It allows for private, secure development without the fear that your proprietary code is being used to train a giant corporate model. This is the ultimate appeal of the anti-Windows machine. It's a private workshop, not a public library where everyone can see what you're reading. Humiliation is compounded by the fact that Microsoft has been trying to woo developers for a decade. They bought GitHub. They created VS Code. They built the Windows subsystem for Linux. They did everything they could to make Windows a friendly place for creators. But despite all that software effort, they couldn't fix the underlying problems of the Windows kernel and the fragmented hardware ecosystem. Apple came along and simply made a better box with a better engine. It shows that you can't fix a fundamental hardware-software mismatch with just more software layers. At some point, the hardware has to be as good as the code it's running. Apple reached that point with this release, and Microsoft is left standing at the station while the high-speed train pulls away. As news of this laptop spread, the stock market noticed. While Microsoft is still a titan, the sentiment is shifting. Investors are starting to see that the professional market, the one that drives innovation and premium sales, is tilting toward Cupertino. If Apple wins the engineers, they win the future of software. If the next big apps, the next big AI breakthroughs, and the next big security tools are all built on Macs, then Windows becomes a legacy platform for office work and casual gaming. That is a terrifying prospect for a company that has spent 40 years being the center of the computing universe. Bill Gates, despite his focus on philanthropy, still cares about the company he built. Seeing it relegated to a secondary platform for the world's best builders, must be a bitter pill to swallow. The design of the anti-Windows laptop is a direct response to every meme and every complaint about Windows machines. The fans don't roar like a jet engine when you open a browser. The chassis doesn't flex when you pick it up. The screen doesn't have a weird color tint. But most importantly, it doesn't bug you. It doesn't ask you to sign up for OneDrive every time you reboot. It doesn't try to force you to use Edge. It just lets you work. This lack of friction is the ultimate luxury for a busy professional. Microsoft has turned Windows into an obstacle course of notifications and suggestions. Apple has turned the Mac into a silent partner. That difference in philosophy is why the engineers are begging for this machine. They want their focus back. What happens next will define the next decade of tech. Microsoft will likely try to release a more streamlined version of Windows, a Windows 12 that tries to strip away the bloat. But can they really do it? Can they part ways with the advertising revenue and the data collection that they've baked into their business model? Apple doesn't need to sell your data. They sold you a $3,000 laptop. That clear transaction creates a different kind of trust. The anti-Windows laptop is not just a piece of technology. It's a symbol of a different business model, where the user is the customer, not the product. For Bill Gates and Satya Nadella, this is a moment of reckoning. They have to decide if they want to be a platform for everyone or a billboard for themselves. The engineering community is small but influential. One senior developer switching to Mac can lead to a whole team switching. One team switching can lead to an entire department changing their procurement orders. This is the ripple effect that has Microsoft in a state of emergency. They are losing the influencers who matter. Not the ones with millions of followers on TikTok, but the ones who decide which servers to buy and which languages to use. When the architects of the digital world decide your foundation is too shaky, your building is in trouble. Apple's new laptop isn't just a threat to the Surface, it's a threat to the entire Windows brand. Let's look at the battery and power management for a second. This is where the humiliation really hits home. For years, Windows users accepted that if they wanted to do real work, they needed to be near a power outlet. The moment you unplugged, your performance dropped by half, and your battery vanished in 90 minutes. This new Apple machine maintains 100% of its performance on battery. You can be in a coffee shop, on a plane, or in a park, and have the same computing power as you do at your desk. This mobility is a superpower for engineers who move between meetings and deep work sessions. Microsoft's hardware partners are still light years away from this level of integrated power management. It makes every Windows laptop feel like a tethered relic of the past. The software engineers also begged for better virtualization. In the modern world, we run everything in containers and virtual machines. Microsoft's Hyper-V is powerful, but it's heavy. Apple's new silicon has dedicated hardware acceleration for virtualization that allows engineers to run entire server environments on their laptop with almost zero overhead. It's like having a data center in your backpack. When Bill Gates was building Microsoft, the idea of this much power in a portable device was science fiction. Now that it's here, it's being used to run away from the software he created. That's a historical irony that hasn't been lost on the tech community. Even the operating system itself, macOS Sequoia, has been tuned to include features that Windows power users have wanted for years, like better window tiling and more granular control over background processes. Apple essentially looked at the list of reasons why people stayed on Windows and checked them off one by one. They removed every excuse to stay. They made the transition so easy and the rewards so great that even the most stubborn Windows veterans are rethinking their loyalty. The humiliated look on the faces of Microsoft's leadership isn't just about losing a product cycle. It's about realizing that their competitors are willing to give the customers exactly what they've been asking for, while Microsoft was too busy trying to figure out how to monetize the Start menu. What makes this laptop a true anti-Windows device is its longevity. Engineers want a machine that will last 5 or 6 years. Because of the thermal efficiency and the build quality, Macs tend to hold their value and their performance much longer than their Windows counterparts. A Windows laptop after 3 years often feels sluggish, cluttered with registry errors and fragmented files. A Mac tends to stay as fast as the day you bought it. For a professional, that reliability is worth its weight in gold. Microsoft has tried to fix the rot of Windows over time, but it's built into the way the OS manages resources. Apple started fresh, and it's paying off in a huge way. Inside Microsoft, there's a sense of frustration that they are being punished for their openness. They have to support every weird printer and every ancient piece of enterprise software. Apple doesn't. But that excuse is starting to wear thin. Most modern work happens in the browser or in specialized development environments that are cross-platform. The old ties that bound people to Windows are fraying. If you can do everything you need in a browser and a terminal, why would you choose the slower, more intrusive experience? That is the question being asked in every tech hub from San Francisco to Bangalore, and the answer is increasingly Apple. Microsoft has also struggled with its own messaging. They tell you that Windows is the place for creators, but then they include apps like Candy Crush in the Pro version. It sends a mixed message. It says they don't take the professional user seriously. Apple's messaging with this new laptop is laser-focused. They didn't even mention games until 20 minutes into the presentation. They focused on compile times, neural engine throughput, and display accuracy. They spoke the language of the people who build things. Bill Gates always prided himself on being a coder first, but the company he founded has started to speak the language of marketing managers. The disconnect is obvious, and it's being exploited by an Apple that has never been more focused on the high-end market. As we look at the benchmarks, we see that Apple's M-series chips are now outperforming high-end desktop CPUs from Intel and AMD in certain engineering tasks. This is staggering. A laptop that fits in a slim sleeve is beating a tower that weighs 20 pounds. This performance per watt advantage is the core of Microsoft's humiliation. They are tied to partners who haven't been able to innovate at this pace. For years, Microsoft could blame Intel for their laptops being hot and slow. Now that Apple has proven it's possible to do it differently, Microsoft has no one left to blame but themselves. They had the resources, they had the talent, but they lacked the vision to create a truly integrated hardware-software experience. The engineers didn't just beg for this, they demanded it. They spent years complaining on forums, sending feedback, and hoping for a Windows machine that could match the MacBook's reliability. When that machine never arrived, they started to leave. This new release from Apple is the final invitation. It's the door being held wide open. The humiliation for Bill Gates is that his company helped build the very world that is now turning its back on them. The internet, the cloud, and the software development industry were all nurtured on Windows. But now that they've grown up, they want a more sophisticated, more respectful home. Looking forward, Microsoft is in a precarious position. If they can't find a way to make Windows feel like a premium, professional tool again, they risk losing the high-end market entirely. They might remain dominant in the corporate world of spreadsheets and emails, but they will lose the souls of the people who create the future. Apple has shown that there is a huge, hungry market for a device that prioritizes the user's time and privacy. They've shown that people are willing to pay for quality if it means they can escape the chaos of a cluttered operating system. The anti-Windows laptop is more than just a product. It's a wake-up call for the entire industry. Bill Gates and Microsoft will eventually respond. There will be new chips, new versions of Windows, and new marketing campaigns. But the trust of the engineering community is hard to win back once it's been lost. You can't just buy loyalty with a new feature. You have to earn it with a commitment to quality over years. Apple has been building toward this moment since they released the first M1 chip, and this latest laptop is the culmination of that journey. It is the machine that proves that the Windows era of professional dominance is over. In the end, it's the users who win. The competition between these two giants will hopefully force Microsoft to rethink its strategy. If the humiliation of seeing their best users switch to Apple is what it takes to get a cleaner, faster, more private version of Windows, then we should all be rooting for Apple's success. But for now, the crown has shifted. The best tool for the world's most demanding users is no longer running Windows. It's the machine that engineers begged for. And it's the one that has Bill Gates and Microsoft searching for answers in a world that is moving on without them. The tech world is in a state of shock, not because Apple did something surprising, but because they did exactly what people wanted. In an industry often driven by gimmicks and planned obsolescence, a return to high-quality, high-utility hardware feels revolutionary. Microsoft's crisis mode is a sign that they know they've missed the mark. The anti-Windows laptop is here, and it's changing everyone's expectations of what a computer should be. Whether you're a coder, a scientist, or an entrepreneur, the message is clear. Your tools should empower you, not track you. And for the first time in a long time, the most power-hungry users have found a tool that truly speaks their language. Microsoft is left to contemplate their mistakes, while Apple leads the way into a new era of professional computing where the user is finally king again. This is the story of a rivalry that has taken a dramatic turn, and the winners are the people who use technology to build a better world.